The Batman, one of the most highly anticipated movies of 2022, has finally come out, and I saw it last night, so let's talk about it. But before we get into that, I just wanted to preface that this will not be a spoiler-filled review. I will just be talking about what I thought of characters and actors' performances and certain things like the soundtrack. I will not be giving spoilers or anything that might ruin your movie experience watching it for the first time. However, if you, like me, like to go into movies knowing absolutely nothing, not even what people think about the movie, feel free to click away and do that now because we're about to get into it. All right, now that that's out of the way, first off, I want to just say that this is probably one of my favorite Batman movies ever made, including Dark Knight. And I know for some of y'all that is heresy, that is blasphemy to say that anything comes close to The Dark Knight, but I think this does. And we'll get into those reasons why. And again, no spoilers. First, I want to address the biggest question that everyone seemed to have going into this movie, and that is, does Robert Pattinson seem like Batman? Is he a good Batman? And the answer to that question after watching this movie is he is an absolutely phenomenal Batman. I loved him in the cowl. He really did amazing as the character, and I never felt for a second that this wasn't a Batman movie. My only problem with Pattinson, and this might not even be him, it's just how the movie was set up. I thought he made a poor Bruce Wayne. He didn't have that playboy billionaire type vibe to him. He was super depressed. To his credit, he does do a very good job in the scenes where he is Bruce Wayne. However, it just never felt like Bruce Wayne that I grew up knowing and reading about. One of the things that made me really enjoy Christian Bale and Ben Affleck's versions of the Batman was the way they played Bruce Wayne. He felt rich. He felt like he was a playboy. He felt like Bruce Wayne. I think Pattinson's doesn't really do that, but he definitely stands out in that he doesn't play it the same way as Affleck or Bale, but I do miss that version of the Batman where he's Bruce Wayne, billionaire, playboy by day, and then Batman by night. But hopefully they can expand that more in future sequels. But he's not Bruce for that much of the film. In fact, he is mostly in the Batman suit for the majority of the movie. So, not my biggest pet peeve with the movie. And honestly, I think he did a great job. And I loved his version of Batman. The suit, everything. He had a very realistic take on the Batman, which is what Matt Reeves was going for this whole time. I just want to say that the soundtrack was amazing. It's phenomenal. If you enjoyed the soundtrack as I did, it's on Spotify already, so you can go and check that out right now. I listened to it on the way home from seeing the Batman, much to my girlfriend's chagrin. Action is amazing, although they do lean a lot more on the detective part of Batman's character, and we'll get into that in a sec. There's one scene in the movie, I won't get into it because spoilers, but it's probably one of my favorite scenes since the hallway scene in Rogue One with Darth Vader. Like, it was amazing. A lot of the shots from someone who dabbles in filmmaking, I really enjoyed a lot of the cinematography and a lot of the unique ways Reeves uses the camera to tell the story. I thought was really good, and you see that within the first 5 minutes of the movie. However, it does not lean on its action scenes as much as Dark Knight does. The difference between this and Dark Knight, the main difference is the Batman focuses so much on the detective part of the movie. Personally, I loved the mystery in this movie. A lot of the riddles and who was what and all this stuff was really, it made the movie really fun. And I really enjoyed seeing Batman truly being the world's greatest detective for the first time on the big screen. And of course, The Dark Knight had certain elements of Batman being a detective, but it wasn't as fleshed out or as utilized as it is in this movie. And I really enjoyed it. So I would say the main difference between this and The Dark Knight, besides its villains and actors and all this stuff, is the focus on the detective part in the Batman and the focus on action in The Dark Knight, which there's nothing wrong with either of those. Andy Serkis as Alfred was a concern I had going into the movie. Personally, I loved Michael Caine's version of Alfred in The Dark Knight. I was just afraid that Serkis was a little too young, too buff to pull off this role, but he does a really good job. He's a lot less of a father figure than Caine's version of Alfred, but Serkis does a really good job here, and I think the only problem with his version of Alfred is that he's not in the movie enough. Hopefully they do flesh out his character and give him more screen time in future sequels. All right, a lot of the promotional material going into this movie was centered around the Bat and the Cat romance. It really focused in on Catwoman and Batman teaming up and doing a ton of stuff together in the movie. And to be honest, that was a major concern for me going into this. I did not want Pattinson's first movie as Batman to be like a romance, and that would be the main focus. However, after seeing this movie, my fear didn't come true. That's not what this movie does at all. In fact, the opposite actually happened. I wish they fleshed it out more. The relationship isn't as flirty as I remember it being in the comics. I do think their partnership in the movie is very good, and I can't wait to see more of them in future sequels. The romance isn't fleshed out too much. It kind of seems forced. However, the Batman's not supposed to be a romance, so I'm not too disappointed. And to be honest, if I was looking for a romance film, I could go down the hall and watch Marry Me if I wanted to.
Superstar Kat Valdez and Grammy-winning Bashton will perform their new song, Marry Me, and exchange vows in front of a streaming audience of 20 million people.
Yeah, I think I won't. This movie definitely benefits from not being connected or focused on setting up a cinematic universe. And I know for some people, that's like, I really wanted a cinematic universe founded around Reeves, Batman, and all this stuff. I was like that too when this was announced. But the movie isn't dependent on the cinematic universe aspect, as a lot of Marvel movies are. And I think that's a great strength to this film, and it definitely benefits from the fact that it doesn't have to focus on setting anything up, except maybe a sequel. I really enjoyed that part of the movie. And if you have any worries going into it, like, oh, this is gonna suck not being a part of a cinematic universe, go see the movie first, and I have a feeling you'll agree with me. Okay, let's get into the villains, because how can we have a Batman movie review without talking about the villains? The main villain was Riddler, but there were a lot of villains in this movie. And there's this theme of the corruption of government, so there were, if you really want to get technical, there were more than like 6 villains. But the main 3 were Riddler, Falcone, and the Penguin. The main of those 3 being Riddler. Like, the focus is Riddler. And this might be my favorite version of the villain. This version of the Riddler is a lot less like the comic book version or Jim Carrey's version, and I believe it's Batman Forever. But an amazing villain. He's based off of the Zodiac Killer, this version. And he, at the beginning of the movie, really provides a sense of danger and mystery. And he does feel like a threat, because it always feels like we're one step behind him. He's always one step ahead, and I really enjoyed that about the villain. Yeah, he's really good. Falcone is good. I don't know about the actor choice. This is the one time in the movie where I was like, I don't know if I would have cast that guy. He does a very good job, though, but to me, it doesn't feel like Falcone. That I know. Very good job. They fleshed him out and used him a lot more than I thought they would. Reeves does a very good job in this movie with the villains. There's no like Spider-Man 3 mistake where there's too many villains. The Penguin is awesome. I loved him in this movie. Colin Farrell is unrecognizable in this role, which speaks to how far we've come in makeup, face technology in movies. Like, we see that with Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian and all that stuff. Yeah, this is just more evidence of how far we've come in filmmaking, that we can take an actor and make him look nothing like how he actually is and it look realistic. Farrell does a great job in the role. I can't wait to see him in future movies. He does add a bit of comedy in an otherwise really dark film. All right, the big question I think you all have right now, at least because of the title, is the Batman better than the Dark Knight? And I think this is an unfair comparison. I know I made it because of the title. I wanted a good and engaging title, but I think it's an unfair comparison. And I don't think you should go into this movie or out of the movie being like, is this better than The Dark Knight? I think that's the wrong mindset with this movie. But to answer the question from first time viewing, now keep this in mind. I've watched The Dark Knight probably at least 10, probably. This is my first time watching The Batman. So that's another reason why I feel like this is an unfair comparison. But off first impressions, The Dark Knight is still my favorite live action Batman movie. The Batman, I could totally see after watching it more times, and maybe in a couple of years when nostalgia wears off from The Dark Knight, I can definitely see this being my favorite Batman movie at some point. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing day. And until the next video, peace out, bro skillets.